Thank you everyone for joining us today on Let's Talk Business series by Reality NXT. To begin the discussion, I want to ask first from all of you, what are you guys up to and why are you so passionate about PropTech sector in particular? Let's start with you, Sudarshan.
So at Strata, we're democratizing commercial real estate investment as such. So as we've gone deeper into the business, at least what knowledge we had earlier from a business standpoint to now, we see a huge change. Generally, how people's investment journey has been in real estate is being very, very shallow in that class, right? Knowledge is not there, asset management skills are not there, when to exit, when to enter is not there. All the gyan in the world on which stock to buy, which stock to exit, which FD to book, when you should liquidate, etc. But considering real estate, which is 60-70% of one's portfolio, the most underpenetrated segment. So real estate wealth management itself is, I would say, everyone thinks they know real estate, but trust me, they don't know real estate, right? Like even now, after 2 years being in asset management, I would say I still have a lot to learn. So imagine an investor who's a working professional, etc. How much knowledge would they have, right? So the idea is to manage the 70%, 60% of India's wealth in a better way to what they are doing right now. Right? So that's been the core learning, and we are trying to scratch the surface as of now, but we clearly know it's a very long journey for us.
So is that the passion behind the sector?
So two passions. One, definitely to I'm a Marwadi, so the intent is always to make money, and why not make better money for others as well. So that's number one. But second, from a sector standpoint, I think India is on the cusp of, everyone's talking about next 10 years India, next 10 years India. I think Harshad Mehta has been telling since 90s, this is India's decade, right? So I think we have 50% developed market today when we talk about 800 million square feet office stock, 230 million warehousing stock, etc. It's nothing in comparison to how China is. It's nothing in comparison to how US is. So clearly, it is where we see that there has to be someone. It's not just the large fund from abroad who are going to solve. There is a lot of domestic money as well, which needs to be solved in better assets and can be pulled into better deployment strategies as such. So that's what we're solving. So the idea is to work for India, be a party to India, where if the large funds would take 5 years to do it. With our participation, I think we can do it in 3 years. That 2 years is a big difference per se. So focus, if you see our portfolio also focus a lot beyond industrial and warehousing because a solidly underpenetrated sector, huge demand, big demand supply gap as well, which needs to be solved for. Kisi na kisi ko to karna hai. So that is honestly one of our largest passions on can we be ready to be the next China? Can we be ready to cater to the kind of demand which multinationals are going to come in India and solve for this. So that's one of our largest passions which keeps us going next day. Even if you from 0 to let's say 1,000 crores or 0 to 3 million square feet, what is 3 million square feet or what is 1,000 crores in the India story? It's nothing. So that keeps us going. Interestingly, it's not just me, but my entire team right now has a similar passion that there's so much to solve for, and we should get up every morning and go and achieve.
Ashish, as Sudarshan said, kisi na kisi ko karna hai. Is that the reason you have entered in the PropTech sector with your company?
Yeah, actually, the work that we're doing at Propsoch, kisi ko bhi karna nahi hai because it is quite it's a very contrarian approach that we've taken to the business, right? So you have the big names of Housing.com, Magic Bricks, 99 Acres who have solved the discovery problem, right, for home buyers. But no one has really taken an approach of educating the home buyers, ensuring they take the right decisions, and they have access to the tools which are required to make the right decisions. I come from a B2B background. I've been with Godrej Properties, Anarock, right? And they were all companies which believed in deep research when they were acquiring properties, right? Or when they were servicing their clients. But I never saw that translate at a ground level to consumers, right? So consumers come and buy at pre-launch, they buy at launch, there's a lot of FOMO, there's a lot of uncles and aunties giving you advice, or the local brokers, they're doing their job, they know these two projects, they have to push it. But there is actually no single source of information in the market where a consumer can get totally unbiased advice, right? So what we decided to do is, I'm extremely passionate about this, although I've been B2B, I'm really passionate about solving for the consumer's problem because once you do that, that's the real sign of development, right? So today, if you go to the US, all the information is available out there. We were just discussing, you've got MLS in the US where, anyone can go and access data.
Yeah.
The Zillows, Redfins of the world have been built on the back of that data. In India, you don't have anything like that. So why not try and accumulate all that data, process it in a way that consumers can understand, right? And then advise them on which is the right property to buy. And the best part is, a property which is good for you might not be good for him, right?
Right.
So we get into that level of analytics to kind of advise our customers on which is the right property. So and he used the word democratizing, the investment opportunity for people. We are actually democratizing the knowledge which is available out there for the retail home buyers. So that's why we're here.
So Sanjay, what's your take on why your passion is there for this PropTech sector and what you guys are up to?
Yeah, I don't care about PropTech sector. I don't care about market size. I don't care about any of that shit. I just build things that I want for myself that I'm not getting. It's as simple as that. And it just so happens that what I want is also something that's required by a lot of other people. But if it wasn't, I would still build it. And essentially, it's as simple, right? Like, we're building India's fastest and most comprehensive property title search engine. Outside, I think a lot of people kind of refer to us as Google of property title searches. And not that this matters, this is just a spiel that you tell investors and stuff like that. But as you mentioned, earlier, 84% of household wealth in India is in land, property, or real estate, according to the RBI. 11% is actually gold, and 5% is other assets. Now, another statistics that's probably shocking to people, I myself didn't know, is 2/3 of all court cases, particularly civil court cases in India, are related to land disputes.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you the scale of the problem. But even if it wasn't that, I would still build this. But I don't have any particular, things toward PropTech or things like that. I only build shit that I want for myself. That's why I'm building this. Because this is something I could use. Just so happens I would love it if other people also want it. Yeah.
So in Strata, we use the lingo moat. So what is your business moat?
I think at early stage, if somebody says they have a moat, that's also bullshit.
Yeah.
Speed is your only moat.
Yes.
And that's why we focus a lot on shipping. I would argue that even DeepMind didn't have a moat, and even today, right? I think it's very falsified conception to some extent, and no moat is unbreakable. And actually, the concept of moat and how we perceive it probably comes from social understanding. So for 20 years in the Valley, for instance, Google has been seen and from the outside as this unbreachable wall. But for 20 years, VCs there have been still funding startups to break the search engine business.
Yeah.
But if you ask somebody today, as a founder in India, and you went to a particular investor and you said, can Reliance be disrupted? Or can Adani be disrupted? Most VCs in India would look at you like you're talking shit. The moat as a concept is a social construct.
Yeah.
It is not something that truly exists. But it depends on the optimism of the particular market. It depends on the type of founder that is attacking it. I believe that I am the best person to be able to do what I'm doing. And so there is no discussion about anything else. My moat is my speed and my ability to ship product and the ability to understand my user better than anyone else. And I believe that it exists with us because I'm my user of my own product, like I'm saying. And so therefore I believe I know what my users want. But I don't think any startup in India, no broker, ShareChat, Byju's, Cred, none of these guys have moat, and neither do I. So
quite interestingly put, Sudarshan, I saw your response immediately saying, business moat is not there. But when you go for investment funding, right, all the investors ask you, what is your business moat? So do you agree with this, or do you also not have a business moat for your Strata?
I agree with him. I think the biggest moat is speed. So at Strata, that's been our edge. Like I said, a 0 to 1,000 crore journey in 2 years is a speed. Like I said, from a real estate standpoint, it's still too small, but at least that's an achievement and a milestone which we look at. I mean, I remember in our pitch deck, which we said, we'll do a 1,000 crore sale or an AUM in 5 years, right? And obviously, sounds good, but we know you'll overachieve it. We did that in 2 years, right? So yes, VCs definitely look at more that what can you build which is defensible, and speed is your answer. Because at least in real estate, in PropTech, to put it up, nothing is proprietary to a larger extent. You can create something like that, but who can build something at the fastest and capture the market at a faster pace. But more importantly, continue to keep improving and keep upgrading yourself is the only way you can maintain that monopoly position if you want to look at it. So VC's perception about moat is nothing but can you be a monopoly trader in the business? If you can, build fast. I'm happy to keep funding to ensure that you can be a monopoly, because at monopoly there's a hell lot of other things which becomes much easier for you from a business standpoint. So that's my perception. So I agree with him. Because all the other companies, whether it's ShareChat, Byju's, etc., they've all grown at that speed where the size of their business at the speed at which they did has been their biggest moat of sorts. So a VC's perception when they're investing is not just on the business, because let's say when we started, it was an idea. We said, hey, you know what, we'll sell real estate online, people will buy it, they don't have to come and stand at the registrar's office and do it, it can be done everything online. As ambitious as an idea, everyone thought we were a Ponzi scheme when we started, because who buys? Because the traditional way is I need to come, sit and review, and here's someone who does everything, so it's very hard for people to believe. We've disrupted that in the last 2 years by saying people, no, you sit at home or you be at Bahamas enjoying your holiday, but you can invest and start generating rents tomorrow, right? So that is that. So VC looks at that first, but I think that 99% money is on the founder's conviction and his capability or his past execution. That can he do what he's trying to do? Dreams everyone has, but does he has the wherewithals to, or at least a vision to execute that dream? I think that's what they look at in the investment.
True. Ashish, do you agree with this point?
Yeah, so I'm actually very happy that this point came up, because I've been asked like, what's your moat and stuff, and in one very funny call, one of the guys he had just joined that VC firm, and he told me, what would stop me from just quitting my job and doing exactly what you're doing? So yeah, you should try it, So, but that moat word has been actually thrown a lot, and I think there's a certain value to it, right? Because if you're just like someone else, right, then you don't know what you're doing, because you're just making a Me Too product slightly better, and that someone else, if they're more deeply funded, they'll kill you in no time, right? So the way I'm looking at differentiating, I would prefer to use that word, is through intent, right? Our intent is simple, that developers might see our data, they might be like, why have you rated my project lower than that project? So this is the technical information. Now when a consumer comes and sees it, he'll be like, okay, so these guys are really unbiased, right? So that positioning, that differentiation we want to build on, and I'm personally very passionate about it. And the way I'm hiring and building my team, I'm only looking for that particular quality, that you're not here to make a quick buck, you're here to actually change a behavior in the market. And you won't believe it, Kritika, we are doing something which probably even the big boys will find it very difficult to do. We are charging the consumers for this information today, right? Home buyers typically have never paid for information or someone's advice when they were going to buy a property. We are charging them, and people are paying. And once they go through a service, they're like, man, this is what I should have done for my previous investment. So I think that by itself is building a strong, I won't say moat, but experience in the market, and they're going and referring. So most of our business is through word of mouth. We are small, we're not marketing in a big way, so word of mouth is actually coming in a big way. So so when we charge these people and they're paying for it, then we feel like, okay, we are causing a very gradual behavioral change in the market. And after a point in time, this could be the way people buy homes. You no longer have to just go listen to anyone and randomly go and buy a property. So I think the intent and the experience that we're creating would probably be the moats that we'll have. I don't know for how long, but we'll keep pushing and going faster and building better, and let's see where it goes.
So how are you leveraging technology for your company?
Yeah, so great question. So we have two things that we're doing with technology. One is we've created, which is already out there, we have created a marketplace where we put all real estate professionals in that marketplace. So you want to speak to an architect who will analyze your floor plan, you want to speak to a lawyer who will do a due diligence, you want to speak to a Vastu expert, you want to speak to a home loan expert. We've got all of them. We've got around 7 experts, categories of experts, right? And a whole bunch of really strong people in those fields who are empaneled with us. So that is one piece, which is a pure play marketplace. Consumers find us, they avail the services, we get a share of the revenues from that. The more interesting thing which we are going to launch in March is actually going to, we've analyzed close to 500 projects in Bangalore now on 100 plus parameters, right? And these could be as minute as floor to ceiling heights to densities of the projects, right? To micro market analysis and stuff. And we put it there. The beauty of real estate is once you've collected the information, the only things which change is pricing, availability, and construction progress, right? So this data which is there now can be used for someone buying in resale, someone buying in the renting out a house, because that data is frozen already. So the house dimensions don't change, right?
Yeah.
So and once we build that, we are rating and ranking all those project spaces that logic, right? And then we are driving consumers to connect with our experts to say, okay, so you've got this amount of information. Now, do you really want to understand the pros and cons of this project versus that project? And there we bring in the human connect, right?
Nice.
So the technology takes them through all the data, shows them all the analysis, and tells them, out of the 100 projects or 500 projects which are there in the market, these 10 are suitable for you. But in these 10, you better speak to our experts now to shortlist further, right? So that's how we are doing it, and we're really excited to launch this.
Nice. And Sanjay, how are you leveraging technology for Landeed?
I think first of all, whatever we do, we always ask, how do we do something 10x faster? And so technology is actually one of the only ways that helps you do this. So for instance, we spoke earlier about legal assistance for looking at a property. In India, prior to every property transaction, something called a legal opinion is generated, right? And this is a shitty concept in itself. Think of it like a comfort letter that was recently banned by RBI. Basically, a lawyer sits down, looks at a property and says, hey, as long as this dude from 1984 doesn't come sue you with an illegitimate child, this property is clean and good to go.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you get sued, the lawyer has no liability or anything to protect you. If a comfort letter is banned by the RBI, why is legal opinion something valid when the person that's generating has no hook to it, right? And not only that, legal opinion typically for, even the simplest property take anywhere from 1 to 2 months, right? Now, our legal opinion comes out in 3 to 5 days. I'm already 10x faster. And that's because we're using technology to make document procurement much faster. Why does it take 60 days? It's not because the guy is sitting down and making sure that everything is clean and good to go. He's spending majority of that time going out and trying to get all the documents from government offices and through paralegals and asking users. And the worst thing about it is, like, imagine a law firm that you hire to do a legal opinion. They'll give you a requisition list of documents. Guess who has to procure in most cases? The user. You commission them and they give you a document list. You have to go to these government offices, collect them, and then pay them for part of that service, right? And so by being the fastest at document procurement, we're the fastest at generating legal opinions. And when you're able to do that, you're able to do transactions much faster. Whenever you're able to do transactions much faster, generally, people will be more interested in investing. That asset class becomes more liquid. And when an asset class becomes more liquid, you generally have an increase in NAV, net asset values of that, of that particular property, right? And so essentially, we're making everything faster, and therefore making a particular asset class in India much more liquid, and thereby in the future much more transparent and accessible to people. And so I guess that's our answer. We just use tech to make the whole diligence process much faster.
So I'm curious to know, how do you monetize data?
Yeah.
Like, what would be the future of this?
Yeah. I have no idea, right? Like, there are multiple ways to make money on it. So what we realized by looking at this problem is almost the entire tech infrastructure to be able to do this is either underbuilt or unbuilt.
Yeah.
And so the biggest problem for me is not making money. The market space is so wide that money is there for the taking if you're able to solve it, right? And so if you become the central validator for property transactions and say this property is Landeed verified and people trust in it, it's the same reason people pay for a stupid check mark or a tick mark on a social media, right? And if I'm able to do that, that's one way. If I'm able to help property transactions go much faster and there's a rise in asset classes, and I'm able to bring title insurance to India, that's another way, right? If I just want to build a property title search engine where people just want to verify the property and do it globally, that's an area. But that's what we're focused on right now. building a global property title search engine, starting with India, because I fundamentally believe that some countries might not, but India is somewhat in that category. But respect to private ownership of property, both the government and other people, respecting that, and and ownership rights is fundamental for a country to go from an emerging market to developed country. It's not an aftermath that comes in, right? So you have to be able to wonder why I'm able to buy an apartment today morning in New York City and sell it tomorrow evening, but I'm not able to do that here. That's because of the due diligence process. That's because our system is broken, and that's why we're kind of here. So if you basically you're able to make money proportionally to how well you solve society's problems. So as long as we're doing that, I think there's a market there for the taking.
So Sudarshan, how are you leveraging technology for Strata?
So on multiple grounds, right? So one, let me start, let's say from the time of acquiring a particular property. So first is about leveraging data on the price at which we're buying, or the tenants, the rents which they're paying, are they benchmark rents, or is it an outlier in terms of like, hey, everyone's paying 100, but he's paying 300 rupees, and the seller's expecting a capital value on that. So that is one parameter. Again, this because of the access of data which we have vis-a-vis our investors who don't have that kind of access of data. That's one edge of getting that, number one. Second, we built in a whole scientific process of acquisition now. So about 80-85% of our acquisition engine is scientific. 10 to 15% is still variable because there's a lot of other variable factors which go in, but at least that 80-85% is a big learning which we got, and we're trying to improve that even more as we move forward, as we keep progressing. That's on the acquisition side. On the demand side, which is where our investors come in. So the entire journey is online, right, for them, right from doing KYC for them to deciding to invest, then transferring the funds, which is completely online. People have come and given checks to us. We're like, hey, why are you giving checks? It's just online. We create a new virtual bank account for you. Why don't you just transfer the money to that? Then to enjoying the rents, tracking the entire investment, tracking all the property documents, insurances, tracking all the sale and lease data which goes in the particular property after they've acquired on real-time basis, keeping them updated. Real-time for us is a month.
Yeah.
It's not how we said in New York, you can buy and sell.
Yeah.
It takes process for a month for things to get updated in the government's data and for us to get it and give it to our investors. So that is a real time which we're able to offer that to investors. And entire asset management itself. Today we have about 21 properties. Managing that, we built in such a way where I can manage even 300, 400 properties just like that, where everything, it intimates us from the time when property tax has to be paid, insurance has to be paid, when the next escalation is going to be due, the invoice automatically gets generated accordingly. The receipts to investors go automatically. So a whole lot of things there, but one of the biggest learnings which we have got, especially, and this is a huge consumer learning for all of us, is we thought that someone who's investing 50 lakhs a crore might never come through his mobile. He'll go through his website or come meet us and do it. We haven't met 95% of our investors till date, and 85 to 90% of our investors come from mobile. Right. So very interestingly, it's one thing which we failed from our understanding about India in general or consumer behavior for large ticket investments. People are very comfortable investing through mobile application. Right? So we just recently launched a mobile application as well, where they can seamlessly start investing, etc. As much as we've solved for India right now, we've realized that in India, a lot of NRI investments come into picture. NRIs want to invest in Indian rupees as well as in dollars. Indian rupees is an evolved thing, but dollars is still not evolved because still a lot of physical paperwork is there. We've solved for that now to some extent, where entire money flowing into India in dollars can be completely digitized, and paying rents to them on a monthly basis also can be completely digitized. So that's honestly one of our biggest moats, if I have to call it that way for now, short-term moat before everybody starts doing once we've cracked the code. But having said that, it creates that huge opportunity because very interestingly, almost 20-30% of India's real estate is bought by NRIs. And even our platform is about 30% NRI investors. So if I solve for dollar investments, and they would love to invest in dollars. Now, considering what they used to get a square feet, now they get 2 square feet with the same amount, or 1.5 maybe because of the dollar increment, right? So that's another thing which we are solving for. And more so, we built the platform in such a way that I can scale this across the world. So while we are solving for India problem, I think democratization as a problem is global problem. Everywhere where there are large assets, REITs as a market is not evolved everywhere, and REITs does not solve 90% 100% of the problem as well. So there is still 40, 50, 70% of the market which is worth solving for. So ensuring we built the platform in such a way where it can be scaled globally, and we can take in Australia, in Singapore, in Middle East, London, and all the other markets as we move forward and continue solving what we are.
They want to read what kind of transaction has happened on real-time basis, or what kind of growth that particular property has seen. So are you relying completely database on government listing, or you are having your own mechanism to compile this data and provide, or are you collaborating with any PropTech company to provide data analytics?
So Proptech is our shareholder. So we've gone a little more deeper with them on how we can improve our experience with our investors better. So obviously 60-70% we rely on, because they've already solved for something for the longest time. So there's no point reinventing a wheel. And considering they're our shareholders, so our synergies are aligned to what our intent is. But there is 30% of our thing is, I would say, still offline. We haven't been able to crack that from an online standpoint, where we still rely on market intel and multiple other things before we acquire a property. Like I said, we've scientifically created a process in which we will be doing that acquisition. But 70-80% investment decision making helps us from that data. Let's say BKC as an example in Bombay. Is BKC a great investment destination for investors? Absolutely not, right? Because in the last 10 years, your rentals hasn't really scaled up to what it is, which means your capital value has also not scaled up to what it is, right? There are some outlier transactions which have happened here and there, but when you look at an entire market in itself, has it really been that market which investors have invested, made a 20% IRR exit out of the investment? It's not going to do that, right? But it's an aspirational investment for people that if I'm a Mumbaiker, I need to own a BKC asset because it's always a dream for them, right?
Yeah.
But it's one's port of call, right? Like, is it an aspirational investment or is it an investment to generate wealth?
Yeah.
So different mindsets of people, and accordingly people take a call and start deploying capital. Right? So that's there. But data is very, very critical. Investors have become more careful. He told a very important point: people are ready to pay for it. It just shows that there's a huge consumer behavior. Like even PropStack, CRE, Prop Equity, everybody charges for the data. They don't give it for free. Their balance sheets give you a thing how their P&L has grown from 1 crore to 15-20 crores of top line. What these companies are able to do collectively, I'm sure it's more. Shows that they still haven't cracked the market, in my opinion. There's a long way for them to go, but great signs that people understand that if I'm making 1 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore investment, I don't mind paying a lakh.
Yeah.
When I can pay a lakh or 5 lakh to get a legal opinion, I might as well pay another lakh to just find and peacefully sleep at night that am I buying at a premium, am I buying at discount, am I buying at market price, and accept that decision basis how desperate I am to buy, if I want to buy a premium, or how bargain hunter I am buying at a discount, or just because I want to deploy and buy at a market price. At least people are aware and they can sleep peacefully. Otherwise, imagine you buy and tomorrow I come say, oh, I bought this asset at only this much. I think you overpaid there, right? That just shakes up the entire thing for them and demotivates them in generally from a real estate asset class itself, that this asset class means I'll always get cheated, right? So this transparency these companies have solved for is a big decision maker on how real estate will continuously keep growing from an investment market for people.
Agreed. Ashish, talking about speed, earlier we spoke about how speed is, if you're working in speed and if you're making that mark, it is not a moat, but this is how you have to function.
Sure.
I want to understand when you speak with investors, in 2003 and 5, we saw the launch of, 99 acres, Magic Bricks. That time investors were like, PropTech will take time to take off.
Correct.
Then in 2010 and 12, in between that, we saw housing, common floor, and all of these companies coming in.
Yeah.
We heard the same dialogue from investors, the PropTech sector will take off soon. Now we are standing in 2023. We are hearing the same dialogues that PropTech sector will take off soon.
Right.
So what are the main challenges which everyone is facing in PropTech? Why we are not able to take off? Like, even if we talk about unicorn, in PropTech sector, we always have a name, no broker, coming into mind.
Right.
There are a lot of profitable business also happening in procurement fund, like infra market and off business. But what is the major challenge are we facing here? Why we are not able to take off in terms of how investors are putting in?
Yeah, so I mean, you talk about EdTech, FinTech, then you talk about PropTech. There's a stepchild treatment to it. That's what I feel from whatever I see and read. It's always there at the bottom of everyone's investment. What investments we've done, you'll see PropTech at the bottom, or you will not see it at all, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's a scenario globally. I think it's an Indian thing.
India.
Yeah. So, and the reason why it's like that in India is because of the word prop, right? The moment you talk about real estate or property, right, there's so much of ambiguity, what he's solving for, what I'm solving for, what he's kind of institutionalized from a commercial investment perspective. There's so much of ambiguity when it comes to real estate that it's a gamble. Like, you put your money here, will it just disappear tomorrow? Is the asset clean? Are the people behind it clean? Because that's another big problem in the industry, right? To get people with the right intent, with the right pedigree to actually build these PropTech companies who are again dependent on, say, developers, say from a revenue stream perspective, right? So there is a lack of transparency. There's a lot of opacity in the real estate sector. Now, all the PropTech companies are trying to solve for that, right? At a very high level, everyone's trying to solve for that. Some of them do it well, but they might be small. Some of them do it not so well, but they might be big because of whatever reasons, right? But then they blow up at some point in time. So I feel that the VCs are looking at PropTech with a slightly risk-averse approach. And I'm not saying that they're not doing it. You have evidence right here, right? So, but I guess it's a few and far in between compared to the larger pie of VC investments. Yeah.
Sanjay, what's your take on this?
If we're talking about VC funding not coming into PropTech, I think that's one section. PropTech not taking off, I think, is a different thing. Obviously, I think the best PropTech business, but people just don't recognize, is Airbnb in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's not only what I think is the best marketplace, I think it's the best PropTech company in the world. And I'm not saying that because I'm YC and they're, a Y Combinator as well. I have great respect for Brian and, Airbnb, what they built. If you're coming down to the point of VCs, particularly domestic VCs in India, a lot of the times their viewpoint on property, technology, and real estate is that it's a subset of fintech. And you also have to wonder what they know, right? Because at the end of the day, I think founders are responsible for building great companies, not investors.
Yeah.
I think investors can be great enablers, and you were talking about moats. I think there are some people, particularly in India, that think they are the moat, that they invest in you, and therefore they can select winners. And you see in market spaces, large market spaces, where all the VCs coalesce around only two players, particularly in India. And you rarely ever see third or fourth guy getting funded in that space. And they have a very nuanced and view about competition and how that looks like. And sometimes they can't tell apart. Like it's a saying that, I tell my team, like we used to say that when we were in the trucking business, they used to compare us to some other business. So how are you different from them? And the thing that we used to say is, like, at early stage, almost everybody looks the same. And in the same way, when the TV first came out, they called it a radio with, right? Not a TV, until it became its own thing. And so my personal experiences of speaking with VCs, particularly in that space, we don't have many Indian VCs on our cap table, is I went to this particular VC and we were explaining what we were doing. Majority of the people that are at a certain position, they don't have holdings in real estate. There's non-residential. So they wouldn't be users to understand this, right? And they're like, one VC I remember is like, Sanjay, this is all great, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time understanding, the market size of this.
Yeah.
So this was right before I was about to leave. So I said, if you don't mind, let's take a walk out here. And before I was about to leave, I showed her out the window and I was telling her, I was like, my name is Landeed. All of this is land, right? Market size, we're the 7th largest country in the world if you were to only look at India.
Yeah.
I understand water and space are a larger market than us, but if you believe that it's a hard problem, you shouldn't also be consider your investments in rocket companies or space. Like, you have an easier time believing that there's a market out there in space than it is on land, on Earth, right? And number two is there was this other discussion we had. Is like, is it like we were saying that 10% of the top landowners in India own almost 55+% of marketable land in India? It's a very concentrated thing, something similar that you even see in the crypto space, even though they call it decentralized. And they're like, is that true? And all of this. And the simple thing that I was like saying is, look, if you own 100 acres in India, you're considered like 0.01% of landowners. There are farmers in US that own 5,000 acres, 10,000 acres. They use planes. But if you wanted to test it out, I said, look, you can go around your entire BC office, take a note and ask every single person in this office how much land they own. And I will just show you on my app. And I guarantee you 95% probability that I own more land than everybody else combined in here. And so I think there's a lack of understanding about what's going on because they don't face that problem. I think there's also the type of founders that come into this marketplace. Most of them are not probably younger because they don't, a lot of us in our 20s and early 30s are not going out there and purchasing land, right? Or understanding how the whole process goes through. You kind of brute force it. You think there's a broker, there's this lazening guy. And so you never really are touching the problem itself until you face it. That's why I often say that, hey, that's why, like I faced it. I had land encroachment. A minister tried to come in and take over our land. And so that's how I got into this business. And that's how I became a touch point. I grew up, somewhere else and I came back. And so I didn't know any better. I was naive and sufficiently arrogant to be able to say, look, I think I can solve this shit. And so that's how I got into this business. But I also believe, secondly, that like in our country, like especially if you're running a startup in particular spaces, courage is a distribution channel, and it's also in short supply. To tackle some problems, you need to have courage. And that is not something that's tested when you're speaking with people. When people don't face it, they don't realize what you need and what it takes. So dealing with governments is something that we do. Dealing with people that most people wouldn't want to be associated with is something we don't want to do. But do I think that's something that we will face? Absolutely. How many founders want to sign up for this? How many investors have the courage to back something like this and understand? So I think it's not a function of PropTech that's wrong as a sector. I think it's a problem of the participants that think they know this, but don't know any better.
Frankly put, what is your take on this?
I mean, he's pretty much answered most of the points. I think from a VC standpoint, what has happened is erstwhile all the other investments haven't really performed to how other sectors have performed. Vis-a-vis as a proper comparison is one of the reasons why completely agree that they treat it like a stepchild investment rather than anything else. So it's literally the last priority. Very large problem worth solving. Let's say the building we're sitting in today, they really thought that managed office is a problem worth solving way before pandemic happened, right? Everyone started doing it, and after pandemic, you see, I mean, today they're already the ones getting more or less 5 out of 10 RFPs. They're the ones winning it right now in the whole managed space. So it's also about, rightly put it up, it's the guys who are solving other problems are young guys, whereas real estate people, like when we were there, starting business, like, hey, you don't have white hair. How do you buy real estate? How can you sell me real estate? I'm like, no, that's not the problem. I am smart enough for you to get the right asset at the right price. It doesn't matter whether I have white hair or not. That was a similar problem I used to face when I was a lawyer before, right? So people don't care about competency, but they care about white hair that gives them comfort, right? So that is one perspective we're changing, but like I said, courage is one another thing which is there because it's really a large problem solving, and there are a lot of other different bodies involved in this sector, unfortunately, because of how large the sector is, because of which not everyone has that kind of courage, but more importantly, persistence to continue doing that every now and then, right? So unlike the West, where PropTech is really a large sector and there are multiple unicorns doing it, is because the system is well evolved, much better for one to come and take off and solve a problem. Right? So I think fundamentally the problem is, he brought up a point, 2/3 of all the cases are judicial, in civil courts are land related. when you know this is such a large problem, why is the government not really working on solving for it? Like I hear few governments solving for the, hey, we're thinking of implementing blockchain or multiple things and trying to digitize the whole land records.
Yeah.
I think it's a great start. We're already 10 years late. We have the tech infrastructure. We have all the techies in the world for us to solve. How we solve for UPI by, I think it's $1 trillion company in itself. I think if we solve for lands in India as to start with as basic, our courts will be empty and might not have the kind of cases which they have right now.
So in last 2 years, we have seen the difference in raising funds, but yet we saw the setback. What happened to broker network? So this is like far-fetched thing. How do you think PropTech industry would be now in terms of the next 10 years? It's very, as I said, far-fetched. But what do you think now the shift will be? Because we've seen what has happened with broker network. Would that put a setback to PropTech raising fund, or it's, as you said, there are few companies who raise funds, there are few companies who do not, get funds. But will this kind of news have any kind of a bad impact to the sector?
I would say no. To be very honest, if you see, let's say the company you're talking about, they had only one investor. In the company, they didn't have external investors, and that investor pretty much owned 60-70% of the company in itself. So it was more like, hey, I'm starting a new portfolio, which is going to be my own subsidiary.
But as Ashish said, investors bet on more on pedigree also. So it was a pedigree one, right?
Yes, absolutely. But like I said, you need to bring in external investments also, right? If you're going to take 50-60% of the company, the pedigree is taken aside because now it's strategic investment.
Yeah.
If some strategic investor owns 60%, any venture capital, because the short supply will be called at the end of the day by the parent company, and this is a subsidiary, right? Whereas it's a portfolio investment and not a subsidiary. Right? So that is one wrong strategy, if I have to put it up that way. Yes, pedigree of the founder, everything goes the same. But I definitely don't see it hampering any kind of PropTech investment growth. Prima facie for two reasons. I think we are right now going through a massive urbanization. We have not seen urbanization like how China has seen that urbanization. We are going to see that continue. While people talk about China plus one, even if we do become plus one and not China only, there's still so much urbanization which needs to happen for people to come to cities. And I think there's a huge shift from agricultural to industrial economy, as you see, right? So PropTech will definitely solve for that. Has to solve for it. Otherwise, we cannot achieve the scale or the speed we need to achieve in a short period.
True. So Ashish, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so I think the broker network thing which you brought up, I don't think it's going to affect investment sentiment in PropTech because it's nothing to do with PropTech, right? It is absolutely, it's something to do with strategy. It's something to do with the way you built your business or didn't build it, right? We don't know. We don't know the inside story, so we can't really comment. But having said that, a lot of these other sectors also, EdTech, right?
Yeah.
How many such cases are happening, right? Every second day you're seeing people getting fired, companies shutting down, VCs writing down their investments. So I don't think such an issue will damage the sentiment of PropTech investments in India. What is a bigger problem is when you hear news of buildings being demolished, right?
Yeah.
Illegal constructions, violations, areas being flooded. Now that affects real estate as a sector. The moment real estate as a sector is affected, investor sentiments are also affected, right? Which trickles down into PropTech and into the VCs coming into that space and stuff like that. So I wouldn't really say the broker network issue is a big black mark on investing in PropTech industry at all. I don't think so.
Sanjay, what's your take?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't know that company existed until recently. Right? I'm too busy building my own shit. But second thing is that I think India is naturally seen in the context of VCs as capital scarce society, and VCs probably look at, and just general enterprise in India look at labor as very commoditized. But from what I've seen, when I've seen the best of the best, including my previous professional things like that, there's always been a lot more capital available than there are exceptional founders. If they don't know how to judge that, that's on them. That's why you don't have a Facebook. That's why you don't have anything exceptional here, right? That you say and you look at it and you say, God damn, that's great. And you know how else that translates into, as Sudarshan was saying, about founders, a lot of founders, I don't know how many of them even that are unicorn or close to going public, have double-digit percentage in their own company. I can tell you, I don't want to be a glorified employee in my own company that I started and worked 100 hours a week for. Right? I didn't do it for you. I did it for myself first because I wanted to solve a problem for myself. Right? That just shows you that it's not value. For instance, like we heard VC sometimes say we don't want to pay YC valuations. You think talent that's the best in the world will come to you because you want to pay them by the local maximum? If I consider myself to be the global best, why would I take anything less? Right? And so you end up owning 2% of your company. Like Rahul, after I found out, right? Like even in housing.com or things like that, he literally gave away some of his shareholdings at the end.
Yeah.
Why would some founder do that? Right? Because it was meaningless percentage. I would like to believe. For me, when people say like, "Hey, great, you raised a large round" or shit like that, then I said that just means I sold more of my company. It doesn't mean like I value the equity in my company. I value it when I give it to people. And sometimes people don't, like, especially at the employee stage here, don't value it because India hasn't seen great exits and therefore hasn't seen a lot of employee wealth creation through ESOPs, right? And that's a problem. But coming down to the point, like even if you look at the cap table and things like that, I don't think there's a lot of respect because people assume that there's this imbalance between the number of founders that want funding and number of investors that are there. Honestly, now coming back to our own personal point, we could have raised another 3.5 million, 3 to 4 million than what we raised. I don't even want to raise that much capital because this is something I often repeat inside my company, which is we raise to build, we don't build to raise, right? And so I have no idea what I'm going to do with the money that we raised. I can tell you at least $5 million is going into some type of fixed deposit. Like my burn's not going to change. Nothing's going to change. The only reason we ended up, raising the amount of money we did was basically because I didn't know how the next 2 years were going to look like. They were attractive terms. Investors, they wanted to put money in, right? And we still turned down a lot more money than, and then like, so I think we don't have any problem raising capital, but I also don't think it's a sector-specific problem. I'm sure what Rahul was building was great, but you also have to question whether investor taking up 60%, 70% of a company because the opportunity is there is well worth it. You have to look at how Sachin Bansal was, treated from Flipkart after owning minority percentage. But the question that I would actually posit is how many founders today in India own double-digit percentage if they're coming close to going public, or they're Series D, Series E, and Series F? And what are we spending that money for? Like the question that we also ask ourselves, like we focus a lot on users. I rarely ever focus on what an investor wants, and like we often like tell ourselves, like when we think about users, it's not how much you charge them, it's why you charge them. It's not how much you raise, it's why you raised. That matters a lot more. So when VCs can't figure that out, and when founder doesn't know, especially when in our current environment, they look at raising as an achievement. Of all the things I want to brag about, the money that I raised is the worst thing that I have to talk about, and the one that gets the most buzz, and it kills me. And because that's not the example you want to set for your own people. Like money can be the problem, but money can't solve